You could literally tell, an Apple enthusiast, though, that Androids had, cured cancer and, could solve all that. And even if it were true and you had evidence, they would just be like, I don't care. I want to be on Apple. It's incredibly frustrating, to point this out about anything as this person that is more enthusiastic about Android. It's like Apple is totalitarian. The funny part about all of it is that they have that ad where they throw the baton through the screen and everything to against the tyranny of IBM. Well, the irony is that this is them now. They are big tech. In fact, one of the biggest tech companies to ever exist, and they are exactly as tyrannical as the 1984 ad. Now it's them. They've become the insiders. They've become the very thing that they despised. And what gets me about all of it, at the end of the day, is, about Android and that side of the equation. I mean, you can even run emulators on it, because the thing about the App Store with Apple, they censor the shit out of it. You know, App Store censorship is absolutely the norm on Apple, and Android has set up a situation where all you need is the APK, and you can get those anywhere, regardless of what they try to do to shut down F-Droid and everything. Those APK files are effectively able to be distributed wherever, and they aren't able to effectively control it, and that's pretty great because it means that you can put whatever kind of application that you want, on the Android side of the equation, and there's not a whole fuck of a lot that Google can do to shut it down, and everything. And that's great and everything because there's because you can get the kinds of applications that they don't approve of as a result, and you can't do that on Apple, not without finding some kind of jailbreaking exploit and everything on it, and they're always trying to patch against that because they demand absolute compliance and tyrannical control over their own platform and everything, so you won't see certain types of applications on Apple devices short of jailbreaking them via, Cydia and all that other stuff, and, even then, they might not work that well because, you're relying on exploits and everything else, and so, God help you, they may not be stable, and everything else, and they may even demand money from you in order to work properly and everything, and, it will void your warranty if somebody else discovers it, so you have to go third party and go through all that hassle just to, jailbreak your damn device on Apple and their side of the equation, and they're constantly patching against that. And the thing is, why you would do something like that is that you want the kinds of applications that they've tried to restrict, you from having. Like, Apple doesn't approve of this at the end of the day, what I've done here. And the thing is that I'm not spending tons and tons of money on a device in order for them to have an opinion about what kind of applications that I'm running. I don't care. They want my money, then they'd better be indifferent to the kinds of applications that I'm running on the device. They don't get a say there, you know? I don't pay them money to give a shit about what applications I run on my phone, And that's the whole problem with it for me. It's the lack of freedom. It's the lack of, I grew up in a different era with regards to tech, and I have expectations of freedom over what programs and everything that I run on my device, and I can't do that on Apple. Apple wants to do every fucking thing their way, and then, there's the fact that the App Store and, the supposed, security that it provides the Apple person, it's all security theater. And what I mean is just that, the average review length that they'll get for an application, because there's so many coming in, is about 30 seconds. They don't have the manpower to fully police it, and so like plenty of malicious code slips through the net, if you know what I mean. Like it's just they just don't have the time, to do it, because there's so much coming in and everything, these days, that they can't actually police the boundaries of it. And so, Apple's users are still vulnerable to malicious code slipping through and everything. And, I used to think rather naively that it would at least provide some security against people downloading, malicious code and recommend it on that basis. But no, nope. In practicality, given the amount of time that they spend reviewing the code, no, plenty will slip through, you know, and so, yeah, and this is the crazy part about all of it, you like it doesn't matter what you tell them, they're just gonna be like, don't care, don't care, don't care, and it's like, yeah, well, I can run emulators on this side of the aisle, and you can't, so you know what, and even of current generation consoles, so don't care about that. Well, I think you're a rather strange creature.